Hello, testing, check 1, 2. How are we sounding? Looks good. Boom. All right. Let's do this thing. Hello and welcome to yet another Friday feedback stream. My name is Zaak Kerstetter, as you're probably aware of if you're watching this. And this is the stream that we do every Friday where you guys will send me your tracks, your works in progress, the things you are working on right now, and I will try my best to give you honest, constructive feedback on it and hopefully help you, give you some advice on where you can go with your track. So I'm going to go ahead, first things first, and put the link to the spreadsheet in the chat, and I'm going to pin that to the top of the chat. So if you are joining us and would like to submit a track, that should be hopefully pinned there in a second. Let's see how it's going. There it is. What's up, SoloMax? How are you doing today? So if you would like to send me a track, the way this works is you click on that link. It'll take you to a spreadsheet where you're going to put in the link to wherever I can stream your track. SoundCloud, YouTube, Google Drive, whatever. It doesn't really matter as long as I don't have to download it. And I'm basically going to go chronologically top to bottom through all the different tracks, and that's usually how the stream goes. All styles of music, all genres, all skill levels, all experience levels are welcome. I don't really care what it is. I just want to hear some cool, interesting music. On top of that, I'm going to go over the basics, the kind of like general rules that I have for the stream, as I do every week. So first off, ideally original tracks only, so no remixes, for two reasons. Number one, I don't want to deal with copyright strikes or anything on the channel, so if it's a remix, I might get flagged for something like that. And number two, if I'm not familiar with the track that you're remixing, then it is hard for me to know what's you and what's the remix, and so it's harder to give feedback on. So ideally, original tracks. On top of that, I would prefer works in progress. So I know a lot of people like to share songs when they're finished and they're already released out in the world. But honestly, if I give you feedback on a track that's already in the world, I'm probably not going to go back and fix that track. It's already released. So ideally works in progress. And I oftentimes think that it's better and it's more constructive to share a project in its early stages, in its infancy, than it is like a fully finished, completed track. What's up, Roberto? How you doing today? Welcome. I'm streaming a little bit earlier today than I normally am. So hopefully you guys are enjoying the new streaming time. Other than that, if you are submitting a track for feedback, ideally I prefer it if you also give your own opinions and feedback when other people are sharing their tracks. I want this to be a community thing. I want everybody to get involved. So feel free to toss your own opinions, your own thoughts, your own ideas in the chat when other people are sharing their music, and that way everybody can learn from each other. What's up, Janef? Welcome. How are you doing today? Other than that, like I said, I'm going to go kind of chronologically top to bottom. You are allowed to submit multiple songs. However, I'm going to go through and do one song per person until I get through the entire list. And if I get to the end of the list before the end of the stream, usually I do, then I will go through if there's people who have more than one song submitted. So ideally one song at a time, but if we have time at the end, we'll go through and visit the rest of them. Other than that, if you can't make it to one of these streams, but you really want to have your song heard and you really want to get some feedback on it, join the Discord and you get access to the spreadsheet early, basically anytime during the week. If you want to just put a track in there, that means I will review it at the start of the stream because it'll be at the top of the list. So join the Discord if you want access to that before the actual stream starts. It's nice to see so many familiar faces in there, and I already see people putting in tracks, which is great. This is awesome. Sweet. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Bmart sent us this track, or sent me this track, I guess, earlier this week. So we're going to go ahead and check this out. I don't think I listened to this, but we will try it out just to make sure. I'm going to also do a little quick sound check just to make sure everything is working. So bear with me for just a moment. That looks good. Hopefully you guys can hear that. All right, I don't think we listened to this one. Just want to make sure. Maybe we did listen to this one last week. Karen, I don't know if this is a different one or the same one. Well, let's do it again, just for good measure. Yeah, it's pretty dark track. Yeah, I think this track really is kind of nailing the vibe that it's going for. The like dark, ambient, creepy, very like surrealist kind of thing. I do feel like a lot of the sounds in the high frequencies, you had all these kind of like scratchy, distorted sounds. It felt like they got lost in the mix a little bit, and it felt like a lot of your mid and low range was like taking over a lot of the space there. I did like how the distortion kind of changed and evolved. I think similar to what you were. Again, I don't know if this is the same one you played last week or not. It sounds fairly similar, but also sounds a little different. So it could just be not remembering it. Ray, you can send literally any genre you want. In fact, I would encourage you to. I like having a diversity of music here. So whatever style you're into, that's what I want to hear. But yeah, I think it's a cool track. I do feel like I want there to be some kind of melodic element. I think some like weird reverse pianos could be really cool. Some violin could be really cool on top of this. Just to give it a little bit more character and a little bit, I don't know, something a little more melodic in there could be really helpful. If you want to go that direction, if you are very much tied to not doing that, then that's totally fine. But I do think a little bit more evolution with distortion. I think as of right now, it sounds like you're using like a decent amount of like reverbs, but I wonder if you could go a little heavier on that and a little heavier on delays and really have things kind of like bouncing around and like echoing through the space and like really using like the panning and like left and right side, or so yeah, some really interesting side chaining like Roberto was saying there, to really like play with dynamics, play with volume, play with left and right stereo field, really kind of explore the kind of like multi-dimensional space. I think could be really cool. Like have sound start in one ear and like really slowly pan to the other ear could be kind of cool. But yeah, I think you're nailing the vibe, and I think you got all the right elements there. Yeah, Bishop, pay attention to driving. Yeah, that's more important. You can always come back and watch this video later on. But yeah, super cool track. I'm digging it. I like the dark ambient stuff. I feel like it definitely has like a little bit of like a Tim Hecker kind of vibe to it. But yeah, cool track. Sweet. Then we got Josh here. Josh, I don't know if you're still in chat or not, but your link is not working. Do you mind re-copying and pasting that in there? It's not even showing up as a link. It's just like it has the name of the song, but it doesn't actually link to anything. So if you could swap that out, Josh, that would be great. Or maybe it's the one underneath it. Let's see. No, this is a different track. So yeah, Josh, if you could paste that back in there, that'd be great, and we'll come back to it. Oh yeah, no, never mind. It's the one underneath it. So I found it. It's just there's like one row that says the SoundCloud thing, and then the link's underneath it. So I got it. Also, guys, if you are enjoying the feedback or just enjoying the stream, feel free to hit the like button or any of that kind of stuff. Okay. Beat sounds dope. So yeah, so should I call you Roberto or Josh? Which one do you want me to call you? Sounds really dope. I like it a lot. As usual, the beat sounds really solid. I do feel like I want a little bit more variety with the beat, particularly with the snare pattern. I can hear you have like the reggaeton snare pattern, but it'd be cool if you occasionally like added in a few extras. Dun, 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 dun. You could like toss in a few extra snares in there just to really spice it up a little bit. Not all the time, but every couple of bars, a little snare fill I think would fit really well. On top of that, I kind of want there to be either some hi-hats or some shakers in here. That seems like the big thing the beat is missing, is something to kind of like bring up the energy level a little bit, and like maybe not in this first section, but maybe in this section or this section here. Shakers are always a solid, option in my opinion, but a little more faster percussion I think would go really well. Bassline sounds really good, and then I think the big issue, the thing that I noticed the most, is your synths sound a little bit small. As particularly, there's two of them, I think. There's the one that comes in here. This one. That kind of like, that kind of pad chord sound that's kind of ducking in the background. That needs to be way bigger and way louder. It just like it just feels so distant and far away, and I think I want that to play a bigger role in the arrangement, and I think it needs a bit more power. So tossing a saturator on there could be really good. Just turning the volume could be really good. Maybe add either a chorus or play with the unison controls to widen it up a little bit. So that sound needs to be bigger. And then same thing with this guy here. Down, 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 down. That guy, that kind of, it sounds like a weird vocal kind of hit kind of thing. That also could be way bigger. I think those are the kind of sounds that add a lot of energy to this music, and I think that right now it sounds really clean and smooth, but I want the energy level to be a little higher. I want it to like, get really hyphy. So I think making that sound, again, saturate it, really crank it up a bit more. I love the guitar sample. The guitar sample's great. Yeah, same thing here. Needs to be louder. Yeah, same thing with this guy, that kind of like vocally hit. Rhythmically, it could change up. Right now, it feels really consistent. Down, 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 down. So if that had like toss in some 16 notes of that in there, so, speed it up a little bit, even just like chopping it and glitching it up could be kind of cool. It's the nylon stock plugin. Interesting. The nylon string for the guitar. It sounds great. I think you could, I like this little section here too, but I think you could really explore this space, like make the section a bit longer and maybe have like, really crank up the delay on the guitar, make it really kind of bounce around a bit to like emphasize the space before you bring the beat back in. But in terms of like, sound quality and kind of like putting all the sounds together, I think it shows that you're really solid at making beats like this. Yeah, this is like a reggaeton kind of beat by Roberto / Josh, depending on which name he puts in the spreadsheet. Yeah, so Ray was saying using different snare samples as well to switch up the variety on the snare. Yeah, I definitely think swapping up samples every once in a while, especially for fills and things like that, could be really cool. But yeah, feel free, if anytime I'm playing something by somebody here and you're like, yo, this is a cool track, I want to learn more about it, like you can see their SoundCloud name right here. Like to go check them out on SoundCloud, go give them a follow, go give them a like, whatever. Yeah, I totally support you guys to, if you hear somebody who's making something cool and you like it and you're like, yo, reach out to them, like do a collaboration, get together. That's what the whole point. But yeah, this is a dope track. Sweet. Next up, we got a track by Solo Max.
Let me show you how.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Josh.
Let me show you how. 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 Let me show you how it's done right. Let me show you how.
Dope track. I liked it quite a bit. Really liked your bass line. I think the bass line sounded really cool. It was like interesting enough to keep it engaging, but like also had the nice, like it had a nice amount of grit to it that I like in this style of music, without being like too scratchy and too over the top. So really solid job on that. I think a lot of your synth work was really solid. I think the sample was good, the vocal sample. I think you could maybe use a little bit less of it. I think a lot of times with vocal samples like that are kind of the same thing over and over again, a lot of times less is more. And so really picking and choosing where you place that vocal sample, I think could be helpful. I didn't think it was too over the top in terms of how much you're using that vocal sample, but maybe sometimes less is more, or if you're going to use it that much, really slap a bunch of effects on it each time it happens so it sounds a little different. Pitch it up, pitch it down, put different amounts of delay on it so each time. Yeah, operator plus amp is just a solid combo in my opinion. But I think the biggest thing that's holding you back in this track is the mixing on your drums, specifically the kick drum. The kick drum is really where I'm hearing a lot of problems. It sounds a little muddy and it gets a little lost in the mix. And I noticed that even at the very first kick drum right here,
Let me show you how.
like that kick comes in right there and it's just not clear. So I think there's a bit of EQing you can do there. There's probably a bit of like sample selection you can do there to maybe make sure you have a nice solid kick that has like a really clear punch to it. Because right now it's just this kind of like a muffled mush of a kick drum. And especially make sure that very first kick right here like hits super hard and just cuts right through the mix. Because when I hear that impact, I need to be powerful. Boom. And it's not powerful yet.
Let me show you how.
Yeah. You might also want to go pretty heavy on the side chaining from your kick to a lot of other sounds. Other than that, though, I think the rest of your drums actually sound really good. You could probably put a hair bit more reverb on your clap snare sound, just to make it echo out a little bit more. It sounds a little dry right now, and maybe compress it a little bit more to just really crank it up, make sure it's super, super clear. But the kick is really the weakest link in this track right now, I think. And I think it's kind of holding back the whole mix. The other thing that I really want is a little bit more of those kind of like glitchy fills with the bass line. Like you kind of do one right here. Like that little bit right there. That's super cool. More stuff like that, I would totally be in favor of. And you can go really extreme with it, I think, just because the bass line, it's like, it is just that one sound that kind of repeats over and over again. So the more you can glitch it up, the more I think you can like make the whole arrangement kind of work together. I like how the drums switch up here too. Yeah, I like the little percussive thing you have in the background there too. I like that a lot. But yeah, work on the kick a little bit, work on the drums a little bit, and I think you got like a solid banger of a track right here. It reminds me of a track by a Russian dude named Den Dirty. I forget the name of the song though. It's in Russian, so I actually don't know the name of the song. Yeah, check out. I can't speak to all this guy's music, but he's got a track that very much sounds kind of in the same vein as this. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, it's one of the tracks in Russian, so I don't know the name of it. But check it out. You'll recognize it. You'll hear that there's a track that kind of a similar kind of vibe, where it's just this like gritty bass line that just like keeps on changing and evolving, and it sounds really cool. Yeah, Solomax, I think a lot of times when you're like working with sub bass and trying to get the low end really nice and clean, you can do it on, shitty headphones or shitty gear. It just takes a lot of practice and just kind of like understanding what level of sub and what level of kick can you get away with on other systems, and just lots and lots of practice that way. But yeah, it can be a massive pain. But I think the rest of your bass sounded really good. It was just your kick that needs a little tweaking, a little bit of dialing in. Yeah, so Ray, when we're talking about sidechaining, usually people are talking about compression. There are other effects that can do sidechaining, but when people are just use sidechaining as a generic term, they're talking about compressors. Yeah. But yeah, this is a super cool track. So there are EQs that can sidechain Ray, but I generally don't use. Just use the EQ function on the sidechain in the compressor. Usually not. Usually I will just have a dedicated sidechain trigger track. So it's just a kick drum with a really fast decay. And then I'll just sidechain directly from that and use that kind of like a ghost kick. Yeah, there's a bunch of plugins that can do sidechaining to do that kind of thing, but I usually don't end up using the EQ function just because I can EQ. So I'm assuming you're talking about like if we were to go in here and come on, use the compressor. The sidechain has an EQ right here. So the only reason you'd really want to use this if you were sidechaining from a sound that had lots of frequencies in it. So instead of sidechaining to just a kick, you're sidechaining to like a whole drum beat or like a drum group that would have like kick, snare, hat, shakers, all that kind of stuff. And you don't want to sidechain to the high frequencies. You only want to sidechain to the low frequencies. You could set this up to be a low pass and then just have just certain frequencies trigger the sidechain. But usually I'm sidechaining from a drum rack, which means I don't actually need to use the EQ function in here. But that can be useful in certain situations. All right, next track. We got a track from Genef. This is his homework from last week to work on a scary track, which I'm excited to hear. And we got a feedback loop. I'll reset that. That happens sometimes. And let's restart this guy. Nice. So first off, big shout out to Jeff because this is very different stylistically. We challenged him last week to make something that is out of his comfort zone, totally different, and he did it. I personally think you could gone a lot darker with it, but it's super cool to hear people trying different things and kind of like pushing their creative boundaries. And I think that's a really not only really healthy thing to do, it's a very important thing to do to grow as an artist. So big respect for that. As far as the track goes, I thought it was interesting that you even like you kind of still had to end on this thing that was a little bit more in your wheelhouse. This is kind of like this nice little pretty ending kind of vibe, which is much more your style. I thought your use of samples was kind of interesting, and I'm not sure if they really necessarily accomplished the goal. So you had like a bunch of like a dog barking, you had that beeping sound, you had somebody coughing. And so I'm not sure if those did a great job of like setting the tone for me, of like creating the environment of like, I don't know, I'm not sure what those sounds mean in the context of the song, especially related to like the whole middle section of the song. So not that I think that they don't work or they don't need to be there, but I think I need some more context, or I need like a little bit more world building for them to work. And then the dubsteppy part is cool. I mean, it sounds like dubstep, but I don't know if I necessarily think of dubstep as being scary necessarily or dark necessarily. I mean, I guess there can be some pretty dark dubstep, but yeah, Bishop was saying it. It's like the perspective of what scary sounds like from not a scary perspective. But yeah, I think other than that, the intro, I think works okay. The beeping, I wasn't too fond of. And then we kind of have this kind of like bass line that comes out of nowhere. So I think building up into the bass line a little bit more could have been helpful, as opposed to just it just coming in, just to kind of create a sense of expectation before you kind of hit them with that bass line. I like that vocal sample. Yeah, I don't know about the beeping. The beeping sounded a little annoying. A little heavy on the reverb there. Yeah, and then you have kind of like a kind of classic old school dubstep-y kind of breakdown section here, or drop section here, which I think it's cool. I think it works, especially me knowing that like this is like a new genre for you. I do think the sound design could use a little bit of love. I think that it's working, it's doing the job that it's supposed to be doing, but I think that with the sound design, you could get a little bit more creative and come up with some different kinds of sounds that would fit in here, and also help like the flow of one sound to the next. It's very kind of choppy, where it's like here's a sound, here's a sound, here's a sound, and so getting them to flow into each other, I think, could be really helpful. Because it's like sound, 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 sound. It's just like they're very like static. It's like where it's like one to the next. So doing things like crossfading one to the next, or having little in between sounds, little sound effects in the background could be really helpful. Yeah. Yeah, and then I really do like this section back here. I think this section actually has a lot of cool potential, but this is very much, again, back into your wheelhouse where you feel a lot more comfortable. But yeah, I think it's a really cool, bold experiment, and I would encourage anybody who's out there in chat to try it out sometime. Try making a genre that not only do you not normally make, but maybe a genre you're not comfortable with at all producing. It's hands down, I think, one of the best ways to become a better producer is to just go for it. Try something new, and you learn a lot that way. And that's you can learn a lot of things that you can bring back into the style music that you are comfortable with and that you are into making. So, yeah, big shout out to Jeff for doing that. I would encourage everybody next week to send me a track that is a genre that they don't normally produce, as just a general challenge to you guys. It's also like really scary to share something like that because it's not something that you're like comfortable producing. So yeah, anybody else in chat, thoughts, feedback, questions, comments? I think you could lean a lot harder into the scariness, Janef. Like, what does that really mean to you? What does that sound like to you? And I think that'd be a cool place for exploration. All right, next up we got Janef. Or no, we just did Janef. We got Bishop. And also, just to let you guys know, I appreciate all you guys. I appreciate everybody who is showing up here, sending me tracks, giving people feedback, contributing. Yeah, you guys are what makes the whole thing awesome. So big shout out to you guys. I am very appreciative to you. Also, just to let you guys know, we're getting very close to hitting 2,000 subscribers on the channel. So I'm really excited about that. I'm thinking about doing like an extra special, like 6-hour, 8-hour stream or something sometime in the next week or so once we hit 2,000 subs, just to celebrate. But that's all thanks to you guys. So this is your cute track assignment, Bishop? I like this part a lot. Nice. Yeah, that's super different than last week's track. I'm gonna skip around a little bit here. So I think it's super cool. Um, to me, I think one of the big things I noticed was it kind of sounds like 3 different songs that are not necessarily connected together super well. It didn't seem like super off-putting or anything like that, but it did feel a little bit like um, they were distinct parts that only kind of vaguely fit together. So this section sounds kind of cool. And then like right around 120, you switch over here to this kind of like ambient, you have these like Rhodes chords in the background with the synthy thing bouncing around. I love this, but it was pretty different than the section before it. And then the transition right around 2 minutes to me felt a little bit too stark, or is it? Yeah, going from here to the next section felt like that could have used a little smoothing over. Like that just kind of ends, and then the arpeggiator part comes in. So I think connecting those two things together, really spending some time like figuring out what the relationship is between those different parts of the song, I think could be really helpful. One thing you could potentially consider is there's an arpeggiated part and there's also a bass line that comes in. And the bass line, I think, stands pretty hard in contrast to the section before it. So maybe fade in the arpeggiated part first and then bring in the bass line after that at some point. Up to you. Not super huge big deal, but I did feel like that transition didn't quite work for me. But going from here into the last section, I think does kind of work. The drums kind of come in little by little. So yeah, that was my big thing. I feel like the arrangement could have used a little bit of massaging, a little bit of love there, just to kind of make all the sections kind of fit in together. The drums during this section were kind of cool. You kind of end up doing these kind of like heavy metal kick drums towards the end. Well, there's just like lots of kick drums, which I thought was an interesting creative choice. One that I probably wouldn't have thought of, but I think that it kind of works. I kind of like it. I kind of was like, oh, it's like a little bit of like, it sounds like a heavy metal, musician is making something that's not heavy metal, which I think is cool, and I think it works really well. On top of that, I feel like the drums could also be tweaked a little bit. I think in terms of sample selection, you said you're using a bunch of like stock, GarageBand drums. But I think that you could either like slam them through a compressor to make them stand out a little bit more, or switch up the samples a little bit so they fit a little better with the rest of the song. Right now they just sound a little generic, I think. But yeah, I think it's a cool track. I mad respect for trying something out of your comfort zone and seeing how it went, and then also being willing to share it, which is really cool. Van, welcome. I don't know what you're talking about with the Jolly Ranchers and peanut M&Ms, but that sounds delicious. Maybe not at the same time, but both of those individually. Yeah, I mean, I think you did a good job working with the tools you got and making some cool stuff out of it. So what I want to hear is now, like, what's halfway between this and the song you played last week? Like, where's the inner, like, where do you find the middle ground in between those two? And I'm curious what that sounds like. So yeah, do we have? Okay, cool. Sweet, but awesome work, chat. Any other thoughts, feedback, questions, comments about this track? Next up, we got Ray. So you guys are crushing it with the tracks so far today. All right, that's a dope track. A lot of things I want to say about this track. So first off, in terms of just a general vibe check on this thing, sounds awesome. I love the use of distortion. I love the big, huge drums. I love the orchestral choir stuff. I like what you're doing with the bass line. I think the track itself sounds really cool. I'm digging that. In your description here, you're listing some concerns about distortion, dynamics, mud, not enough sub, translation issues, and some mastering stuff. These are all things that I think you should definitely be concerned about. So first off, first off, you're definitely losing the loudness war here. You've overcompressed the song. It's basically the short way to put it. It sounds squashed. It has no dynamics besides the like couple little break sections you have, but the actual drops themselves were just being blasted with noise. And like I said, I love noise, love distortion, love all that stuff. But the issue is there's too much right now, and so there's no change in volume, which means that everything sounds kind of weak and not as powerful as it could. So there's a couple of ways we can approach this, a couple of things you can do to help kind of like dial this in. Number one is you're probably going to need to go back to your mix and turn some sounds down, specifically sounds that are in the background, things that are not like the main most important focus. There's a lot of time where you have just choirs just going on in the background. I go over here. I think. Yeah, you have these like really long choir vocals in the background. Those can be turned down, and I think there's another really distorted sound here that also needs to be toned down a little bit. At the very least, both of them need to be sidechained pretty heavy. It's really hard to mix when there are a lot of sounds happening simultaneously, especially when they're all really long sounds, and you have a lot of really long sounds. So you're going to either turn the volume down on some of the less important sounds to create some more room in your mix, or make some of those long sounds shorter through either sidechaining or just literally just slicing and chopping them to make them shorter. So instead of having these long vocal things, make them vocal chops where it's like vocal thing happens and then it goes away, and then it happens and goes away. And that'll create more space in your mix so you can actually make things louder. The more things you have playing at the same time, the less loud each individual sound can be. That's why when you hear a lot of people who are making this style music, you hear like, here's the bass line, and then here's the choir chop, and then here's the distorted part, and then here's the other thing. You get one or two sounds at a time, and that way every sound can be really, really loud. So using negative space, like less is more kind of mentality to your mix is going to make it so it actually will feel louder. On top of that, when it comes to things like translation issues for playing this on small speakers, for example, this is where that overcompression really comes into play. This is basically the essence of the loudness war, is that you have everything cranked up to the max, right? So everything's super, super loud. However, if somebody's playing this on their car speakers or on their headphones or whatever, they're in control of the volume. So if they turn everything down, everything's going to sound really small. But if you have some level of dynamics, you have things changing in volume, you have some things that are loud and some things that are quiet, they can set the volume, again, to whatever their comfort level is, and it'll still sound good. It'll still sound like there's variety in the volumes, because if everything is maximum volume all the time, as it is during this entire section, we have nothing to compare it to. So be using, again, that negative space, using the lack of sound as a way to make your louder sounds sound louder. So, because you have something to compare it to. But if everything is loud all the time, then nothing is loud, if that makes sense. So having that variety, having that little bit more dynamic. So tone it back on the limiter on your compressor. Not a huge amount, but a little bit will just give you that little bit of range that I think will add a lot to your song. And again, the person who is listening to your song will control the volume anyway. So if you crank everything up and then they just crank it back down, it's hurting your song to be able to sound good on different systems. The drums I thought actually sounded excellent. The kick and the snare were really kind of they were coming through really nice and solid, and I honestly wouldn't really do a lot with that. I think it's mostly that kind of like mid-range, like your mid-range bass, that choir sound, a lot of your distortion, those are all fighting with each other. So that's really where a lot of my concern is when it comes to mixing this. So like in this section, for example, yeah, there's just a lot of background sounds, and I think less background sounds means the foreground sounds can be louder, and I think that's more of what you want to go for. Other than that, I do feel like there's a section kind of over here where you get a lot of noise, and again, I love noise music. I love the use of noise. I love the use of distortion as an energetic choice, as a creative choice, and I think you're doing a good job here. However, I think it'd be cool if this noise kind of came in over time. Like it started off with like less distortion, less dry wet on the distortion, and then over time it kind of rose up. Or again, you had something to compare it to. So you have like a clean section and then a distorted section, or a clean sound and a distorted sound go back and forth. And that's a really cool way to really emphasize that use of noise. I mean, I think like when I listen to this, I think like there's a few Apache tracks that are like, they're using these choirs, there's really loud sounds, but they're also using really distorted, really gritty sounds as well, and making the two fit together. So I would check out some Apache tracks. You probably already are if you're making music like this. But that way you can hear some examples of how like he kind of picks his battles between distortion and the classical cinematic sounds. Make sure. Cool. I'll catch up with chat eventually. But yeah, I think it sounds really cool. Like I said, you're going a little too overboard with your mastering, and I think with your mix, if you tone things down, it'll make it easier to master anyway. I know like the idea is like you always want to like try to like maximize volume when it comes to this kind of music, but it's counterproductive to over squash your sounds like this. Yeah, super cool track, really digging it. I would love to hear this again. If you get a chance to go back in and tweak the mix a little bit and tweak the master, send it back to me sometime, and I'll take a listen to it and see what you can do. Another thing I can just kind of recommend if you are if you're doing this master yourself, which it seems like you are, grab a reference track and just toss it next to this as you're mastering it, and just compare the two, just like solo one and then solo the other, and go back and forth. And that way you can hear like, okay, does it sound too loud? Does it sound too quiet? Does it sound too squashed? Is it not squashed enough? Yeah, that's so key for getting this kind of mastering right, because like the tendency is you want to push it as hard as you can go, but having a reference track is super, super useful. Cool, great. Yeah, awesome track. All right, next up we got Ryan. Yes, so some baby making music. Yeah, it's cool. I'm digging this, Ryan. If you're still out there, uh, I like the vibe a lot. Love the guitar. I think there's kind of two things that kind of stuck out to me about this track. Number one, it sounds like there's just like white noise in the background, like you're using some kind of like vinyl distortion or something that's just generating some noise to make it sound a little kind of lo-fi esque. And I wasn't sure I was digging it, or maybe I think it's okay, but I think it just needs to be a little quieter. To me, it stood out as being a little bit too loud. I could hear it too often and kind of like took over the mix a little bit for me. Um, so that's one thing I think. Just if you want to keep the lo-fi distortion in there, great. Uh, yeah, except it's the opposite bad. This is one of the few situations a tiny bit less distortion uh, would be great. Oh, interesting. Yeah, if it's a little bit of gain staging on the synths, then I would try to get rid of that, or at least tone it down a little bit. I didn't think it was like ruining the song or anything, but I feel like it just like a little bit less volume on that, and I would have been cool with it. The other thing that I was noticing was I like the vocals a lot, although it sounds like you're using some kind of auto tune on them, and I think that may be like a stylistic choice, like you're purposely trying to give it a little bit of that auto tune flavor. If it were up to me, if this were my track, I might go a little bit lighter on the auto tune. Not a whole lot, but just like there's a few points where it kind of like stuck out. I was like, I wasn't sure if I really liked it. But if that's a stylistic choice you're making and you really like that and you want to keep that, then keep it in there. I would like a little bit more vocal processing though. I think you could play around with, tossing in a little bit more reverb and potentially a delay here and there on the vocal to really kind of like make it utilize the space fully. Again, not super necessary, but I think it's a creative choice that if it were me, that's probably the direction I would head with it. Maybe also potentially layering it up with some vocal harmonies and a few other layers in there. But other than that, it seems like it's a cool track. The drums are a teeny bit loud, but not by much. I like that the vocals don't actually like. There's not actual lyrics. It's just like using vocalizations to kind of like fill that emotional or atmospheric role, which I think is really cool. Is that you singing on the track? But yeah, it's a cool track. I do feel like I kind of want the arrangement to go a few more places here and there. I think somebody else mentioned that in the chat, but right now it just seems like it's kind of like the foundation for an idea. So I'm not sure how far along you are in the arrangement. Yeah, chat. Any other thoughts, feedback, questions, comments? Yeah, I mean, I think you'd be fine with a little bit less auto tune in there, and I think that'll totally work. What's up, Melody? There's a spreadsheet that is pinned up at the top of the chat. You can just click on that. It takes you through the thing and just put your link in there. And I'm just going kind of top to bottom through the list of all the songs. Yeah, it does have a kind of like saxophone kind of vibe to it. So like the vocal is doing the saxophone role. Let me put this over here. So this is from SC Soul. Complete with a video. Turn up a little more. Sweet. A nice little ambient kind of piece going on there. Yeah, I think overall this works pretty well. To me, it sounds very much like it sounds to like a soundtrack or something like that. It sounds like a it's the background for or intro to a film or something like that. So Melody, I do this every Friday, and all of these videos get posted to the channel afterwards anyway. And so I'll take a listen to any track you send me today, and then you can watch the video later on if you want to. So, yeah, appreciate you for popping by. But yeah, this is a cool track. A really cool ambient vibe. Like I said, very kind of cinematic, kind of like fits in the background of something. I do feel like some of your pad sounds, like some of these kind of like background ambient things that are going on, are cool, but a little bit generic. They just sound kind of like background sounds. And so I think it'd be cool to explore those sounds a little bit more. I think your piano sounds really pretty. I think it works really well, and I think the melody fits the vibe of the whole thing really well. But it'd be cool to see a little bit more sound design on some of the background sounds to really make them feel a little bit more lush or a little bit more unique or a little like they like draw my interest in a little bit more. I think they work. I think they do their job right now, but I want more from those sounds if possible. So one thing I like to do a lot for this kind of sound is use things like notch filters, for example. So instead of using like a low pass filter or a high pass filter, a little notch filter with a little bit of like really slow LFO motion, and that way it kind of like cuts out different frequencies as it sweeps up and down. And that can be a cool way to add like a little bit of motion in there. Going nuts with like crazy reverbs can be another fun way to like take these sounds and make them like really move around, especially if you add some automation to your reverb. Yeah, and I think the piano works really well for me, but I kind of want it to do more. I kind of want it to like play like add some extra notes in the background up an octave, or have a few more notes in there. If you do too many, I think it'll kind of lose its spacious kind of feeling, but I think it'd be a cool direction to take it. And there's like another kind of plucked sound in the background. It's like a plucked synthy kind of sound. I think that could be a little bit louder and play a little bit more of a role if you wanted it to. But other than that, I think it's cool. I think it serves the function. I think the video fits really well. It has this very kind of like slice of life kind of feeling. Like I said, like adds that kind of like background sound kind of vibe to it, which looks like that's what you're going for. But yeah, cool track. I also appreciated that the arrangement didn't go on for like 12 minutes like that. I think you kept it short and sweet, and I think a lot of times for this style music, people can kind of overstay their welcome. So I think that this is a good length for this kind of track, just to kind of like, you know, like bring people in, show them the world or whatever, and then you're done. And I think that worked. Yeah, a little more automation, like Van was saying. I agree with that. That could definitely work. All right, and then we got another track from Janef and Josh, but they've already both done a track so far. So I'm jumping down to Bill. And Janef and Josh will come back to you guys and do another track from you guys once we get through everybody else. Nice. Really solid track. I feel like there's one big thing that's sticking out to me. Two things maybe. First thing is that it sounds a bit busy most of the time. And I think there's one sound in particular that it's making it sound too busy. And I think if you were to either remove or get rid of sometimes, which is you have this kind of like pitch envelope or pitch bendy bass going on that starts at the very beginning. That little pitchy bass guy, I don't think is doing you a lot of favors. I think it's taking up a lot of attention and a lot of room in your mix, and it's distracting from all the other sounds that I think are actually really cool. So if it were up to me, if this were my track, I would probably get rid of that as a bass line and replace it with a more kind of traditional like bass guitar kind of bass line. And I think that will create a bunch more space in the mix so that things like the guitar or the synth solos don't have like attention stolen from them, and can make it so you can hear everything a little better. That's my main thing. And that sound goes through the entire song. It's like 100% of the time I think it's there. So I think that by getting rid of that, it'll make the instrumental a little more minimal and a little bit more manageable, because it seems like to me this track is like you basically have a backing track that's there to support the guitar solos and the synth solos. And so the backing track itself can be fairly simple, can be fairly straightforward. It's just there to kind of like give a space for those solos to exist in, is kind of the vibe I'm getting from this track. So that bass line I think is not doing any favors. The other thing that is kind of bugging me about this track is the arrangement for your instrumental is basically the same thing the whole way through. What's up, Beatmaker Society? How are you doing today? And so I want things to change a little bit in the background. So getting rid of things, bringing things back, switching things up a little bit, especially with the drums, making the drum rhythm change up a little bit, I think will be really helpful. And that way, as things kind of, as the guitar solos change or the synth solos change, things in the background are kind of changing with it to kind of make the whole arrangement progress all together. So those are the two big things. That bass line, I'm not in love with. I think it's not doing you a lot of favors, and the arrangement, I think, could use a little dialing in, and more variety in the arrangement, really, more than anything else. Other than that, I really like the guitar solos. I like the synth solos. I think that they all sound cool. I think they work really well. It's just getting your kind of backing track to fit with them and support them. I think is the big thing there. But yeah, thanks for sharing that, chat. You got any other thoughts, ideas for this track? I think it's cool. It's just there's the two kind of minor things in there. All right, and we got another track from, I guess, Pirate Techno. Let's pull this up. What's up, Balance? How are you doing? Yeah, Josh, you can put another one up there. I'm not sure if I'll have time to get to it today, but you can put it in there. We can, or at least they'll be there for next week. Nice. I think you got a really solid core idea for a track here. However, this does remind me of the track we just listened to from Bill, in that the instrumental is just one thing that plays the entire way through for 4 minutes, which in most situations is not going to cut it because people have really short attention spans these days. And so I think a song needs to grow and evolve over time. I've talked a little bit before about arranging on stream, where I think you need 4 sections to make a song. You need an intro, an A section, a B section, and an outro at the very minimum. And right now we would just have an A section. And I like that the synth keeps changing and evolving. Like the synth is doing different things. I think in the spreadsheet you said you played it out live, which is great. I like that. But everything else, the bass line and the drums, it's just one loop, just looped for 4 minutes. And so that's the biggest thing you need to change here. And you don't need to reinvent the wheel for each section of your song. Little tiny minor changes, like especially in kind of like weird minimal techno, little tiny changes can have massive impacts on the energy of a song and how the song progresses and how the arrangement evolves. So, taking a new percussive sound and tossing it in somewhere in the middle would be really helpful, and then taking it away and then bringing it back with another sound. Those kinds of things will make the arrangement feel a little less stagnant and a little bit more like it's telling a story. And I think that's really important. That's to me like what music making and arranging is all about. It's like taking your listener on a journey. And here it feels like you brought me to a place that was cool and then just left me there. And I want to go on a journey with you. I want to explore the space a little bit. I want it to evolve, and I want you to show me new things, and then I want you to take them away, and then I want you to bring them back, and then switch things up a little bit. So that I think is the big thing you're missing here, is a little bit more of an arrangement, and either using negative space to get rid of things, or adding some new layers and tossing them on there. I think you kind of have like this like really steady rhythm, so it'd be cool to see the rhythm change a little bit. Toss in some extra kick drums, put in some hi-hats or some kind of percussion could be really cool. Switching up the bass line, maybe even keeping the same bass sound, but switch up the notes a little bit, or have new sound with the same notes, whatever. There's lots of options here. A vocal sample in here could be really cool. Like a ambient vocal sample of just like vocal harmonizations with a bunch of reverb could fit in really well. I don't know. There's all kinds of places you can take it. That's up to you. That's your creative choice as an artist. But I think it needs to change over time. And then if you can do that, I think the rest of the song will really start to like flesh itself out and make a lot more sense and work a lot better. Or even things like filter changes, like having something that like starts with mostly filtered out and it filters in over time, or vice versa. That can be a really great way to make things change and evolve over time. Yeah, I think the production sounds really cool. Like I said, I like your synth part. The drums I think are interesting. I actually really like your bass line. It sounds really cool. It just gets boring after a while. It's just the same thing over and over again. So I don't have a lot of issues with the production itself. It's mostly just the making everything change more than anything else. A little bit of variety, spice of life, But yeah, I think I don't have a lot of feedback on the actual production itself because I think it sounds pretty good. It's like I said, you got a cool, good foundation for a track, but it needs to change a little bit. Cool. So as of right now, we've gotten at least one song from everybody that's on the list. So I'm gonna wait a minute or two. If anybody who has not shared a song yet, go ahead and put it in the thing. And if nobody does that, I think we got at least 2 tracks from people that have already shared, Janef and Josh, who we'll probably get to. Yeah, it definitely has an architecture vibe to it for sure. I could totally see that as a big influence there. Yeah, and if you're interested in glitchy stuff, like I want to hear those glitches. I want to like all that kind of like weird IDM stuff is all about like little tiny tweaks and all the little details in there. So more glitchy sounds for sure. I'd very much be in favor of. Yeah, Balance, you are welcome to share a completed track if you would like. I prefer works in progress, but I'll take a completed track. I'm glad you like the sound of my voice. All right, well, there's a new one in here. Not sure this is from. It's weird. I've been, doing a bunch of video editing of my own voice for things on the channel, and it's weird, like having to hear your own voice all the time. Balance, is your track called Bapness? Is that you? That's a track from Michael. All right. Well, Michael got his track in first, so we're gonna do this one first, and then Balance we'll get to you. Okay, sick. Nice, that's dope. Definitely has like I mean, you're really on point with the funky vibe. Some of those like synthy chords you had in the background had kind of like a Daft Punk thing going on, which I thought was really nice. I feel like your main synth sound though, I want a a little more grit in there, like a little bit of saturation or a little something to like bring it out a little bit more. I think the sound's really good, but I think like I want it to sound really beefy and huge. In terms of what you can do to get this out of like loop land that it sounds like you're stuck in, um, you had that a little bit of guitar in there. and I was wanting a lot more of that. I think having like a really nice solid funk guitar part in here, I think would carry a lot of weight and really make this song work. Potentially, if you can pull it off, if either you play guitar or you know somebody else plays guitar, a nice like funk, like Parliament George Clinton funkadelic style guitar solo in there would kill it, and I would think it'd be really awesome. Other than that, I think some people in chat mentioned a horn section here. I totally agree with that. I think a horn section would also really kind of help carry the melody a bit and like really make this whole thing jam. And if none of those are really doing it for you, normally I don't say this because I tend to like instrumental music more than I like music with vocals, but I think a good funk vocalist on this, and it would be the icing on the cake, and it would seal the whole deal. So those are kind of like off the top of my head the things that I'm wanting in this track is either a little bit of guitar, a little bit of horns, or a little bit of vocals, or some combination of all three if you can pull it off. I think that'll give you plenty of content to kind of sprinkle around to make this whole arrangement work. But I think that you're nailing the vibe, which is, I think, is the hardest part of getting a track down. So I think you've got the core foundation, you got the core elements there, but a few more layers I think would go really well. I'm gonna poke around real quick and just see if there's anything else I noticed when I listened to it. Yeah, the drums sound like especially good for this style. Like they fit in with what I expect for this style of music. Yeah, so I like that a lot. I think if you wanted to get a little bit more obvious, or a little bit louder, I should say, with your bass line, I wouldn't mind that. That might just be I'm biased and I really like, you know, really bass heavy music, but a little bit more volume on the bass line wouldn't hurt, I don't think. But yeah, give me more of that guitar, give me some vocals in there and some horns, and I think you got a gold record. But yeah, super cool track. I like it when people just like bring something totally different. I don't think we've had any funk tracks on the stream for a while, like synth funk. All right, so here's a track from Balance Beta. And once again, I'll just give a shout out to all you guys for coming in with cool tracks. This stream would be a lot less fun without you. that a nay? Sounds good. Nice. That is a really sick track. This is definitely the kind of stuff I've been DJing a lot recently when I've been playing out live. So I've got a couple really minor pieces of feedback, and then for the most part, I really enjoyed it. I think, again, vibe-wise, you guys have been crushing it all day long, and this song is no exception. In terms of things that I would change if this were my track, so during the intro, you have this kind of like filtered out drum beat coming in. I'm not a huge fan of that. I'm more of a fan of like either give me the whole beat or don't give it to me at all. And I think in this song, if this were up to me, I would have no beat here and just have the melodic part here, this little bouncing delayed sound just by itself. And that way all the drums come in together and it feel more impactful. That's a really kind of nitpicky thing, but I think it could make a difference. The other thing that I was noticing is, especially during the section here, right as the drums come in, the feedback on your delays is way too high. We're getting this I'm getting this constant stream of echoes happening in the background, which I think is kind of cool for a little bit, but it goes on for a really long time. Like we're still hearing those feedbacky echo delays like way over here. And so I think toning down that feedback will create more clarity in your mix because there's less stuff sitting in the background. And that way you can use the feedback to build up to that drum happens. And then once that drum happens, then you turn the feedback down and it kind of echoes out and then it kind of like clears up some space over here. Yeah, Echo's got a great ducking setting, Beatmaker Society was mentioning. So at the the effect echo in live as a ducking setting, which means it side chains it to itself. So while there's sound going through it live, the feedbacks or the delays turn down, and when there's no sound, it turns it back up. So that's a cool way to duck out some of your feedback if you want to go for those really trippy, long feedback delays. So that's kind of my opinions on the first section here. I like this section a lot. I also like what you did with the drum beat here, because I've been doing this myself in a lot of my own tracks, where you have one part of the song that has more like a broken beat, almost kind of like hip hop beat, like this part. And then later on the song, you switch to the 4 on the floor. So, like I said, I've been doing that a lot recently. I think it's a great thing to do, especially at this kind of tempo. It works really well both ways, where you get the like slow 4 on the floor, but you also get the broken beat thing. So mad respect for that, because I think it's a great way to get a little best of both worlds in your track. You get a little bit of that kind of broken beat down tempo thing, but you also get the housey thing. I felt like this section here was pretty strong, although I felt like it was a little bit too long before the flute comes in. Like this area here, I think could be a tiny bit shorter, and I wouldn't mind that. Not a huge deal, but just something I noticed. And then I love this section with the flute. I think you crushed it on the flute, the neigh. This part sounds really cool. Super into this. And then there's a little bit of an issue kind of from here on out, where the neigh gets lost in the mix a little bit. And it's really obvious right here. Maybe it's a little later. Like I can still hear the flute, but it's super quiet now. Like right there, especially, like you can hear it, but it's too quiet. So make sure, because that neigh is carrying a lot of the melodic element here, it's loud and clear throughout the whole track. And then other than that, I really love this last section here. I've almost no real critical feedback on it. If you wanted to give me a little bit more of that bass line, I wouldn't mind that at all, but I don't think it's like a necessary change you need to make. Yeah, just for the job, it gets really quiet. And it's still pretty like too quiet here. I like what you're doing with the weird, like the kind of like choir chanting, the like almost like what's it called? I forget the name of that chanting. But I like what you're doing with that. It's kind of like ducking in a weird way with like lots of delays on it. Your use of delays is generally really solid. Same thing with this melody part. This could also be a tiny bit louder, and I wouldn't mind that. Not Gregorian, there's another one. Yeah, love this part. This part's great. I'm thinking Tuvan throat singing. It sounds kind of like that, although I don't think this is actually Tuvan throat singing. Yeah, I love the end of this track. I think the outro, this whole section here is really strong. Just the melody could be a little louder. Yeah, I'm a big fan of this whole song. I think it works really well. It's just a few minor things in terms of volume and a few minor things with arrangement that if it were up to me, I would tweak a little bit. But as I mentioned, I've been listening to a lot of this kind of music recently. I've been playing a lot of this kind of music recently, and I think you're doing a really good job of balancing the electronic music elements with like the world music elements, and making the two work together in a way where they complement each other without it being cheesy, because that's one of the issues with this style music sometimes, is that it can be a little cheesy. Yeah, really awesome track. Anybody else in chat got any thoughts, feedback, question, comments? I like the little logo thing you got going on here too. It looks really cool. I'm gonna start grading you guys on your images you use on SoundCloud. It's gonna be part of the review feedback review matrix rubric, I guess. Sweet. So I believe now we've gotten through at least one track of everybody. And unfortunately, I have a stricter deadline to get out of here. So I know there's at least a few people who have second tracks. I think there's a track from Janef and a track from Josh that unfortunately I will not get to today. However, I'm going to leave them in the spreadsheet and I will get to them at the start of the next stream. However, I also do want to mention there's a very high likelihood that I will be out of town next week, and so I will probably not be streaming either Tuesday or Friday. There's also a very small chance that I might be staying in town, depending on how things go. So I will possibly see you guys next week. If not, I will be posting it around, so you'll be able to see that I will not be here. So I'll see you guys in 2 weeks for either the Tuesday Hangout stream or for the Friday feedback stream. Melody, thanks for joining us. I'm glad you came and checked it out. Welcome to the community. And yeah, once again, I want to thank all you guys for hanging out, sharing tracks, giving each other feedback, all that kind of stuff. That makes this stream super, super fun. So yeah, I'll either see you next week or in 2 weeks from now. And once again, I want to mention, since there's people here, if you enjoyed the stream, hit the like button, go comment on all my videos, go like my videos. If you want to be a super boss, go ahead and share any of my videos to anybody who you think might be interested in them. That would be really helpful. Cool. All right. Well, let's see. I'm going to make sure I save those 2 tracks. But other than that, thank you guys for hanging out, and I will see you guys soon. Have a good weekend, and make some more tracks, and then send me those tracks. All right. Have a good one.